welcome back, all. Hi, everybody.
What up?
Right. Happy New Year, America.
Yes, yes. Happy New Day.
Yes, I am excited to have all of you all back here this evening. I, again, am Pam Ford, the Executive Director of New Day Employment Network, and we are the recipient of a Healing Illinois grant from the state of Illinois, and we have been charged with the responsibility of coordinating programs centered around racial injustices and racism and anything in between. So over the course of the last 6 weeks or so, we've done probably about, 6 or 7 different programs. And 2 of the programs, which were the actually adult conversations, and I invited the team back for those that was able to come back, and we wanted to see what their thoughts were after they had an opportunity to watch themselves on tape and see what their friends and family thought, and see if anything has actually changed once they had a chance to really hear, the information that other people, the diverse group of people, was actually sharing. So I'll start to break the ice. And, first of all, I was really excited that just with the Facebook crowd, that over 2,000 people, viewed both tapes combined.
Mm-hmm.
Was really pleased with that. So we got an opportunity to
How many?
get out there, over 2,000 views. So we had an opportunity to really get the message out there. People started sharing it. And, based off of the information that I received, people were watching with their families, with their children. And, it was some really good constructive feedback, as far as what people got out of it. And again, because people are home, they had an opportunity, after dinner or before dinner or what have you, they had a chance to really sit down and actually watch it. And that's one of the reasons I broke both of ours up within 2 to 3 different, segments. So they wouldn't be anywhere about maybe 20 to 30 minutes a piece. And most of them were about maybe 20, 22 minutes in total for each one. So it was some really positive feedback. I have a diverse group of friends, Hispanic, Black, white, Jewish. It runs the whole gamut. That's why I'm excited to, see my America the way I envision it. So I was really happy to, have my friends actually watch it and really share some intimate information. And most of all, to be able to share with their kids and have their kids have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me feel good. So the first tape, let's do the first one. And it was our implicit bias tape. So whoever would like to go first, maybe 2 minutes, no more than 2 minutes a piece, so we can try to get everybody in. But hopefully that each group had a chance to watch the other person's video, the other person's tape, if not, at least had a chance to, view it real quick. But I would like to know what you all thought, first of all, of yourselves, and then what your friends and family thought of watching you on the tape and listening to some of your point of views that they may not have known that you had. And if they did know you had it, the audacity to actually convey it. So who would like to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Ladies first.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'd just like
2
to say
minutes.
we look pretty good. And I thought we did a pretty good job considering that, we're kind of amateurs. So at least I consider myself an amateur.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was good. I thought it was a good discussion. And my brother, he's in Texas, and he watched it, and he had some positive feedback too. And this relayed to me some of the experiences that he had with implicit bias. But I think that it made me more aware of implicit bias, at least from my own perspective and some of the biases I may have. So I think about it a little bit more because, when we were talking about it and everything, you realize the biases that you do have. So I think it helped me with that, and I was glad that people were watching it. So I did, family and friends, you never know if they're gonna watch or not, but like I said, my brother gave a lot of positive feedback. So, but that's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. So if everybody can stay muted until they speak, then with that way we know we won't have that background noise. Okay. Okay. Who would like to go next?
I'll go.
Okay.
So once again, like I said, thank you, Pam, and your organization for putting this together.
You're welcome.
I'm an amateur at this. I'm not really a public speaker, a Zoom speaker. I have the conversations with my family and friends privately. So I definitely thank you for, this opportunity. Just kind of talking back with family and friends after they reviewed it, after their initial shock of seeing me on here. Then it just kind of open some doors for the conversations, for us to be able to discuss this on a broader range, and also with them discussing their implicit biases. And then with me, it just kind of made me reflect on mine as well, ones that I didn't know that I had, and just looking back, just doing reflection over my life at the ones that they were implicit biasness towards me, and I just didn't realize it until you become more aware of what they really are. So I'm really interested in just kind of furthering this and doing a little more research and just looking at everything as a whole. So I feel like if I can be a better person, teach my children to be better people, and just kind of see people for who they are, and not the color of the skin or background or things like that, I think we all can, play a huge part in just making the world just a better, more enjoyable, lovable, and peaceful place, and getting to that America that we're all happy to perceivably be going in the right direction in.
Thank you, Andre. Who's got next?
Okay, so I will go. Andre, I want to piggyback what he said, though. Definitely, Pam, you opened the doors, and thank you for,
Okay, first of all, let the people know, Vashanti, who you are.
Oh, okay.
It was Vashanti, just share what role you played in.
Gotcha.
Program. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I played the role as the moderator in Breaking Barriers in that conversation and allowing others to tell their story. And out of the 3 panelists that we had to share their story, one thing is that it's definitely not enough time, right? We can have a lot of conversations, but it opened the door, I believe, for what the feedback that I received, that it was good for them to just share their story, for one, but also for 2, for others that did watch, just go, wow, I didn't know that about you, or I didn't know that this has happened to those who they personally knew. So I thought it was definitely a good conversation. And for me, it did give me, I would not say a deeper understanding, but a deeper passion to really say, okay, what is next? What's my next role? And going forward, because I have done a few conversations as far as diversity and inclusion for corporate. And, we talked about the implicit biases, but of course the racism part and how people are targeted for little things that we look at and not able to tell their story because we don't know their name. So how many more stories can I touch or share, allow other people to say, hey, I know you have your story. You need to share your story. So that's what I got from the takeaway from having that conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vashanti. Okay, Kaylin.
Kaylin Patterson. It was really weird to have people have to look at you in a different light, because we became that people that they knew. That was the one thing I took away from it. Like, they didn't know, because we carry this stuff every day, and they don't think about the hurt and the harm that's happening in your life on a regular basis, that you become desensitized to it. And then they hear, but you act like this and you smile and, all these other things. And then they're hearing, not just me, but everybody in the panel had something that had happened at some point in their life, that it became regular. And just, that sparked conversation where you could open the door and they could see that reality is really there. It's not, on TV. It's not in some TV show or some movie. This is real life, and it happened to somebody that they know and care deeply about. So that was a big step forward, that we even did this, to basically do some groundbreaking, because it's just not a conversation you want to stand there and while the water cooler and say, hey, did you know I was beaten by the police at a certain time in my life? that's not something you do. And because there's no way to open that door for it, this was a good opportunity to do so.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see here. Jake or Jonathan and Claudia?
I'll go.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't really get much feedback, from people that I know. I know some people I know watched it. My friends are kind of, my close friends are kind of different, where I guess we don't really talk about things like that. We just kind of know kind of who we are, and we are all pretty very accepting and everything like that. So they might have made a comment about you're like a big Zoom star now or something like that, or whatever. But that's like their way of telling me, like, we watched it, like, and it's cool, like, whatever, but I think definitely it was fun having a conversation, because even just going into it, just realizing that you have those impulses to prejudge, without even thinking, it definitely makes you more aware of just more aware in general, as far as making sure that that you kind of are more aware, you're mindful of what direction you're going and why, and then you also can correct it, because you realize, like, wait a minute, I don't really feel this way. It's just my my implicit bias taking over. So that's, I guess, my takeaway from that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you, Jake. Jonathan and Claudia. And you are part of the Breaking Barriers forum. So definitely want to hear, because you all definitely broke some barriers. So very interested to hear what your, first of all, what your thoughts were once you watched it, the conversations you had with each other, and then what others thought of it.
Yeah. So first of all, the feedback that we received, that I personally received, was all positive. Definitely eye-opening. There was, some, on the more humorous side, there was someone who approached me and said, well, I wish somebody would look at you guys like that in public while I'm with you. They're not going to walk away, keep looking at you. And just a little backstory, Jonathan and I had issues at the beginning of our relationship as an interracial couple, where we would get looks when we're out in public, and so that just a little humor that I received after our call. But I think it was really eye-opening, not only for family and friends of mine that watched it, but we learned a lot from all the other panelists that were on the call as well. And Vishanti's right that, we know the Breonna Taylors, we know the George Floyds. I'm sorry, we have kids in the back.
Oh, was that your kids? Okay, I was trying to figure out what was the noise coming from. Okay, go ahead.
But we don't know the everyday individuals, like the panelists that we were on the call with, maybe some of the people who are on the call now. So it just sheds light in those areas, and it for those who aren't directly affected by racism, these conversations bring it to the forefront and actually put a face to the situation and make it more real, I guess, in some people's eyes. Because if you don't experience racism firsthand, you can hear it and see it on the news, but you just kind of look at it and, okay, there's that story, and you kind of continue your day, and it doesn't really resonate the same as to interacting with someone who's dealt with it firsthand, or, just a story that's brought to you. So I think I've learned a little bit from it. I know my family and friends have learned a little bit from it, and it's definitely going to be something that, we carry on and share these stories with other family and friends, or even our kids when they get old enough.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Nathan?
Yeah, I would just say a main takeaway I took from all this though is really like having more compassion. It's real easy for us to fall into this like I know I'm guilty of it too. A lot of us are this like it's the self-centeredness. A lot of times you have to put compassion in the forefront when thinking about other people. I'm sorry, still check on.
Let me
sorry.
get it.
Okay, no problem. Uh-huh.
Um, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we have to put like compassion in the forefront of our minds because a lot of like personal experiences I've been through and stuff like that. It's easy for us to come up with prejudgments of other people based off past experiences. But it's always to put in mind, some is not all, and a lot of times it's because you had a personal experience of whether it be injustice or whatever before in the past that's not a representation of who the person you're interacting is. So it just overall takeaway for this, even for implicit biases, stereotypes, racism, is just really compassion, and hopefully it's not going to be lacking moving forward. People can start to, with conversations like these, people can start to have compassion because the fact that we're having this conversation is people from different races, ethnicities, and stuff like that, that bridges that gap, so I can know if I'm offending somebody. And like I said before, if somebody truly cares about you, they're going to kind of check themselves at the door like, oh, I didn't know I was offending you. We just got to have the courage to kind of speak up and have these type of conversations though. So.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Can anybody else feel free to jump in? One of the things that I thought about when I watched it, obviously I watched it from beginning to end, both of them. It's like when we were introducing ourselves, it made me feel really proud to know that, the coordinators, we really went out of our, the coordinators as a group, we really went out of our way to make sure we had a diverse group. So when talking, we weren't just talking from the Black experience. We wanted people to speak from their own experiences and, from different ethnic backgrounds. And that made me feel really proud that we were able to do that. And then the other thing was that I truly believe in listening to the tape that we all came from a place of truth, a place of authenticity. I believed, just listening to that. Now, will we all go out there and say, you know what, I'm getting ready to conquer all of this? No, but just the mere fact is that when we do encounter it, we call it out, and then we check ourselves first to see, okay, did I provoke this, or that person is feeling the way that they're feeling. However, you know what, I have to do something different because I'm not going to let them get to me based off of their own biases. Does that make sense? And so, that was, throughout the entire tape as I was listening, because it was all, if you think about it, it was, for the implicit biases and for the breaking barriers, it was experiences. We all have our own experiences. We have experiences against each other, our own experiences against ourselves, against others. So when we have, this made me, and hopefully it made you as well, have a conversation with yourself,
Exactly.
have a conversation with myself. I had to check me because nobody knows you better than you. So it's like holding that mirror up and saying, okay, this is the man in the mirror and this is who you're talking to. And that person, in the mirror, speaks back to you and tells you your truth. And this really sort of opened that up with that. And so I was mesmerized really by listening to the authenticity of the different stories. And it was just unbelievable just to be able to hear different people. And we didn't know each other, but you know what, there was that similarity. It was that similarity. And that's why, from this here, the, traditionally we consider, February Black History Month. And I know just we were out of work. We were off work on Monday, at least I was, for Dr. King's birthday. I got, some parents, families and together to, do an artistic, painting, to really, deal with, to talk about Dr. King and some of the things that he did, try to educate, kids through art on who Dr. King was and some of the things that he stood for. And it had nothing to do with color. He just happened to be a Black man that was looking for racial equality for everyone. And so that was really something. And so, I mean, I look at it from the adult perspective and then also, the kids' perspective. So we got some things coming up that I'm excited about, in maybe the latter part of February and March. So anyone else have anything that they would like to share, maybe something that stood out to them? Go ahead.
I want to just say that, the whole experience, I'm used to, speaking on implicit bias and racism in the legal profession. So this was an eye-opening experience for me because oftentimes I'm too much into like, hey, this is the employment sector. You can't use this type of gender bias and all this stuff for employment. But of course, I know, from my advocacy on, diversity and inclusion that implicit bias work, it exists. And, one thing that resonate is that words can be powerful, but it also can just totally tear you up. So to briefly share you a story, I mean, I'm an immigrant. I came here from South Korea in 77, and we lived in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. We were called every, derogatory racist comments about being Asian and even worse. So, fast forward, I'm going to federal court on a, 3-day trial. I represented the city of Peoria and also city officers. That's part of my job. And so on my way to court, somebody, at a bar walking outside made a comment like totally derogatory from a movie that, if I shared what he said was just awful. But it's, it just kind of like once he said that, and I'm there with my clients, I'm walking in a suit with heels, it tore me back to when I was a little girl crying in my closet because all the kids would just totally say hateful things to me. And like, I went through college. I worked hard to get into law school. I graduated. I took hours to pass the bar exam. And his comment took me down to a bare level of being that person and put me to that base. So when we see what ex-president Trump said to incite people, words could also inspire, like, Amanda Gorman did, but also could incite and be hateful. So we have to be so mindful. Implicit bias is like cutting, it's like, killing someone with tiny little cuts. That's what implicit bias is. But racism is like you take a knife at someone's heart and you put them to their base. But they're both very, very, just toxic to the community. And we also have to realize that as a minority community, we can't be silos. We have to unite. And that's the thing. Trump was good at dividing people, dividing minorities. And, coming to the whole forum and what you did, Pam, is excellent. You brought people from totally different walks of life, different walks of profession, and made us realize that we are all human beings. We also have to be strong and to be able to call that racism, that bias, that implicit bias for what it is. Because if you sit there and you do nothing, it's going to carry on. You're going to let someone like Trump win and be reelected. It's not going to be Trump, but it may be a different form of Trump. So great job, Pam, for doing all this.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to say anything before we get ready and close out?
Yeah, I would.
Sure, go right ahead.
One of the things that I think is very vital, it's what we're touching on, is we shouldn't be silent. I know, we say, what is that old saying? You loose lips stink shits. It was ingrained in our head to keep your mouth shut. You don't want to cause trouble. And the one thing I learned with helping my dad study for any police exam he was doing, trouble's already there. Either we identify it for what it is, or we turn a blind eye and become ignorant, like the people that we speak out against. Ignorance it's not acceptable, especially when you claim to have the intelligence that can purvey it and convey it for what it is. And when we're silent, we're basically being complacent, and we become basically enablers of the wrong that's happening. And I can't imagine how we can progress as a nation, because Pam, you remember when I was trying to find people to put on these panels, it was a struggle. And I'm talking about very well spoken, very open minded, and very outspoken, until it was time to put the feet down to the ground and get to work. And then all of a sudden, suddenly they're unemployed and they don't have a job application. So it seemed really sad that, the people that want to be seen as leaders would not step in. And if God calls us to be that leader and to speak up, then you best do it, because I guarantee that somebody else besides you is already suffering, and suffering much worse than you think is suffering.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else that have anything to say before we close out? Let's not all speak at once now. Speak at once. Well, let me just ask you all this. What's your takeaway? What's your takeaway from all of this? And for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to view the other person's forum, if you were on the forum that I did with Sherry and Kaylin, if you have a chance to view that, I implore you to do so. And then for those of you who haven't had a chance to watch the Breaking Barriers, I implore you to do that, because it's definitely worth listening to. Mm-hmm. In closing, let's just see. I just want to see what everyone's takeaway would be this experience. And we're going to have real quick. Go ahead, Kaylin.
I think Kaylin wants to say something.
You think so, Kaylin?
Yeah.
About seconds each person.
The thing that
I'm gonna put the clock on you, Kaylin. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
That's gonna put the clock on you.
That's right. The one thing I did learn is that by being so frustrated with the oppression that we've been dealing with, we're not listening to white America, because they're crying out too, and they're saying something that we're not hearing. And I was very open to listen to that, because they are having to deal with a lot of stress, because they're taking the personal blame for the congregational shame of someone else. And, so basically that we're not going to the person that's causing the trouble. We're going to the people we know. But if we know the people, they're not the one causing the trouble. And they're saying, well, why are we being blamed? They're taking it personally. And I said, if we're not addressing that, then we're becoming just as much part of the problem as anything else.
Absolutely. So it's like people becoming, you're complicit, pretty much.
Yes.
Being complicit. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So that's your takeaway, Kaylin. Thank you. Sherry, well, you know what? Let me go to you right before me. Jake, what's your takeaway?
Just my takeaway is to just be more present, with other people, whether it's somebody I know or people I just meet, and just kind of towards something that Kaylin said, just understand that they're going through something that we may not even be aware of. So, before you judge them and before you alter the way that you should to interact with them, to possibly the negative side of things, just try to be aware of the fact that we're all human beings, and we're not that different. We're all just looking for happiness and comfort and love and everything like that. And we can only get it together. We got to help each other get to that point. And not try to put yourself in a bubble and nobody else can be around you, or nobody, if someone's not like you, then you don't care. just try to surround yourself with as many different type of people as you can and get to know them. And you may have things that you don't agree on, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. It really, in the end, it does not matter. Now there are certain things right now that I know are definitely dividing people. And I really wish, and I hope, and I pray that stops. I see it. I see it on, I hate saying that. I have a friend that will probably kill me for saying, I see it on both sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
But I do, I really do. But I'm trying to think, I think I just lost my train of thought, but we got to come together. We can't, if you're super happy that Biden won the presidency, just be happy, but don't do it at the expense of people that are super upset that Trump didn't get elected, and vice versa. It makes me cringe. I see people posting on social media, and I just feel bad for them, because it's like they're still posting about the election. It's like, it's over. It's over. It doesn't matter. I mean, it really, it's not going to stop. The United States government, electoral college, isn't going to see their Facebook feed and be like, oh, wait a minute, we didn't see that. Trump's going to be the president again, or whatever. It's or I've seen people that are super happy that Biden becomes president, and they're still bashing Trump. It's like, dude, that guy is gone. He's out of here. Just forget about it. It's almost like you're wasting your time even giving any sort of mental thought to it. And I don't know how I got on that tangent. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But because it's just, I just wish people would just more focus on things that are beneficial to themselves and the people around them, as opposed to, just stupid little, I don't know if it's the right word, tribal kind of little, alliances. That's it. Sorry for the ramble.
Please don't be sorry. I mean, this is just your thoughts and your feelings. Andre, what's your takeaway?
I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute.
What's your takeaway?
My takeaway is just to have a little more respect and compassion for other people, because I see a lot of our issues come from the lack of respect, lack of respect in other people's opinions, beliefs, thoughts. We just kind of, if it does not tie into what we believe or our agenda, we kind of, dismiss it, or, we get aggressive, trying to force what we believe or what we think on someone else. So if we can just learn to just kind of respect one another, as individuals, who all have something that they strongly believe in, and strongly will fight for, and just respect that, and just have, I think, like Jonathan said, more compassion, because we don't know, seeing someone, we don't know what they go through, what they experience, or how, they deal with experiencing it. So just respect, having a little more respect, and just showing as much compassion as we possibly can, I think will go a long way. So it's definitely my takeaways from the segments.
Thank you, Andre. Jonathan and Claudia. We'll start, because there's two of you. I'll start with Claudia and then Jonathan.
Yeah, so I definitely say, and to kind of piggyback off of what Sunny said, the power of life and death is definitely in the tongue, right? And so with that being said, any change is going to start with you and me and him. It's going to be up to us to be the change that we want to see. We can't continue to, if some people are raised certain ways, you can't continue to keep that moving if you know that it's not, putting you or anybody else in the right direction. You can't continue to speak the way you speak if you know that it's tearing somebody else down just to lift yourself up. So definitely, power of life and death is in the tongue, and just be the change that you want to see.
Man. Jonathan?
Yeah, I say overall takeaway. A lot of this, when I was going to say this before, but when I went back and like rewatched the video of our segments and stuff like that, it was therapeutic too. You know, a lot of it, the sharing your story does kind of lift the burden off your shoulders too. A lot of times, is being transparent and communicating how you feel. But like Claudia said, there's an obligation that we have after sharing the story is to, always want to always look inwardly. And then, part of our spiritual journey and the reason why this is so powerful for me now is that because it forces me to look inwardly in terms of like, what am I doing wrong or what am I doing that I can change? A lot of times it's really perspective. When I did have opportunity to talk to people in different cultures, it's, really just about perspective. I've even, I'm guilty of passing judgments on the people that I was completely wrong on, and again, there's a lot of it was about perspective. I don't know anything about that person. And just because I had a negative experience a couple years ago doesn't mean I need to judge this individual off of, and it's like a little microsecond thing that you do. But, again, if we have compassion in the front of our minds, that stuff isn't there because it's hard you can never get somebody to agree with you by arguing with them, right? Because that negative emotion only creates more negative emotion. So leading with compassion and, like you said, being that change instead of conforming into the negative society. If you ever been in a room with a positive person, everybody seems like, hey, I like this person around, and their energy starts to change once that person comes in the room. You kind of want to be that individual as opposed to being that individual where like, you're negative and you turn the whole room negative. So just leading with compassion can really do that. And, like Jake said, we're all human at the end of the day. Everybody needs each other. No one's really better than, you take all the stuff away, titles, degrees, money, everything else. No one's better than anybody, And just to remember that and keep that at the front of your minds, I think that's my overall takeaway from this.
Thank you. Sherry?
Well, I think my overall takeaway is awareness. I think we need to be aware that this is in us and in a lot of people, and not only be aware of it, but then do call it to people's attention and not necessarily call them out on it, but make sure that they realize that this is how you sound to me. I've had that experience where, I accuse people maybe of saying this sounded like, that was a little bigoted. And that's not what I meant. That's how it sounded to me. And so they need to be aware that I might not be the only one that takes that from what they say. And if we're aware of it and we do have a conversation about it, then maybe people can get past these biases and all the racism and stuff, because if we don't discuss it, it's an uncomfortable topic for most people. And if we don't discuss it, it stays uncomfortable, it stays hidden, and we need to bring it to the surface. So I just think that people should be more aware of what's going on and be willing to talk about it and share some information. And just as you said, as Kayla was saying, we need to understand that white people are going through some stuff too. Might not be the same as us, but obviously there's something going on because they too mad. They're very upset. So we don't think they should be, but you know what? They are. So what is it? And we need to be aware of that as well. So awareness is my takeaway.
Thank you. Hey, Kate.
Can I add one thing?
Sure. Go ahead, Jake.
Sherry, to your statement, people need to also be willing to be wrong. As far as what they're thinking or what they're feeling, or I don't want to say what they're thinking is wrong, but just what they've grown accustomed to being normal. They need to be at least willing to like think, well, maybe that's not right. They say one of the leadership consultant that I follow, he says like the duty of a good leader is if somebody comes with you with an idea, you need to, instead of say, no, that's not my way, it's not right, you got to say, how could this actually work? So people kind of have to be willing to humble themselves or I guess maybe be vulnerable, vulnerability. There's strength in vulnerability, because that's the only way you learn is if you make yourself vulnerable, do things, experience things that you haven't experienced before, or talk to people you haven't talked before, or just think about yourself in ways you haven't thought about yourself before. Makes you a little vulnerable, but it actually helps you grow.
Come out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yes, stepping out. Okay, Vishanti?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. What's your one takeaway from this experience?
Awareness and doing my part is my takeaway, especially as raising two little boys. Jonathan's story definitely sat with me as, like you said, the racism, bringing up children in the suburbs and them not understanding that things are different outside of our circle, and starting to unfortunately having little talks just to share with them and see what they know, because we'll be surprised how much our children know. So I think it's not just awareness for adults, but even starting with our children. That way we can shape them into the future to be more positive and not be negative as the world is at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Vishanti. So, Kaylin, you had something really quick to say?
Yeah. Like I said, we trained under my dad, helping him study for the police exam and stuff like that. The one thing they always talked about was de-escalating a situation. If you're truly seeking peace, de-escalating a situation is how you go about it, not basically throwing fuel on the fire. And I think a lot of times when we see people saying they want unity, they'll go right into a divisive speech or some kind of narrative that takes away from the unity and takes away from the peace of an environment that would set about the unity, the compassion, and the peace. So if we find that in our own hearts and souls, then we need to do that self-check and really look at ourselves before we speak any further.
Okay, thank you. And I think you all have said it all. It's like in my Michael Jackson's voice, I'm looking at the man in the mirror and I'm asking him to change his ways. And basically, what I mean from that is, I look at myself and I look at, what are some things that I can change? And that's why having these multiple conversations with multiple different groups of people, it challenges you to really just go deep, to see, okay, am I doing the right thing? What is it based off of? And when, and I ask people that I know that will tell me the truth. I have my own opinion, but I'm going to, talk to people who I know love me, care for me, but it's going to be painstakingly truthful with me if I'm doing something wrong, or if I feel justified in saying or doing something, and they tell me, no, you don't, and they give me reason as to why. Because the thing is, people get so angry and so frustrated, and then people hold things on the inside, and then when it's time, what happens, it just explode. And I just refuse to be, exploding, when I can just be, talking and just venting with people. It's just so important to be able to have people that, that challenges you, yet love you, but challenges your ways, challenges the things that you do, the things that you say, and even the things that you want to be, being that change. Well, what does that change look like for you? And does that change does it reap a positive or a negative effect on people? So,
Pam,
so guys, share.
Pam, you didn't give Sunny her chance to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally forgot. Okay. Go right ahead, Sunny. Thank you, Sherry.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say, don't make assumption. And I think President Biden said it best. Walk in someone's shoes, because you can't assume just by looking at them that they are who they are. I mean, people don't know that I grew up poor. We were on food stamps and all that stuff. So, I have to say that, I don't think I'm better than anyone else. I'm more intelligent. I had F's, in college. And so don't presume that someone by their degree or their position or where they are in life, that they are, not hurting or not understanding. So, walk in everyone's shoes. And I think, everyone said it so well. We have to understand the other side too, and be able to realize that we all come with biases, whether good or bad, but, we have to, unite and be able to collect and be able to, be together in fighting hatred and bias.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, I think that we said all that we can on this topic. Again, I just thank each and every one of you, for participating. And for those that weren't able to come on tonight, the thing is, just watching the tapes and hearing their stories was just mind-blowing to hear other things that other people have gone through that you couldn't even imagine, but yet you came out on the other side. You know, you fought implicit biases, racism with education. You know, you fought it with, you know what, still doing the right thing, even when it was, you know, even when people say, you know what, do the wrong thing. So at the end of the day, we are all responsible for our own actions. That's it. That's all. We're responsible for our own actions. So I say choose love, you know, choose love. And I love all of you all, because I'm so excited to know that you all will even be vulnerable enough to even share in this experience. So have a wonderful weekend, guys.
Same to you guys.
Thank you so much for participating.